The fisheries industry in Guyana contributes approximately $75 million annually to the country's foreign currency earning through exports. It is a major contributor to Guyana's gross domestic product. This is one of Guyana's industries which support thousands of Guyanese, but it can be destroyed by actions of some who use the sector for illegal activities and gains. In this week's edition of Guyana 411, we take an in-depth look at the fisheries sector and its role in the development of the national economy. We will also tell you some of government measures which have been put in place to ensure the sustainability of the industry. So join me, Tiffany Rojas, as we bring you this week's edition of Guyana 411. The Fisheries Department of the Ministry of Agriculture is responsible for managing, regulating, and promoting the sustainable development of the nation's fishery resources for the benefit of the stakeholders in the sector and the national economy.
The fisheries sector in Guyana is made up of three primary components: marine fishery, aquaculture, and inland fishery. The sector continues to be affected by sustainability issues, but the government is taking steps to address illegal, unregulated fishing in Guyana.
The Fisheries Department of the Ministry of Agriculture, in collaboration with MARAD, will try to do what is mandatory under the law and license every vessel for fishing. The percentage of those persons who have come forward for license is low enough to make it very obvious that we have a significant problem with IUU locally. In some parts of the country, the entire fleet you won't find more than 5 to 10% of the persons with license. Their arguments are that they don't fish in Guyana. But the fact is, they are Guyanese-based, and they expect the Coast Guard, the police, and the Fisheries Department to lend support whenever any problem occurs in the waters. And more often than not, those very persons, on occasion, will fish in Guyana.
Country representative of the Food and Agriculture Organization, Reuben Robertson, believes that if illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing is not addressed, it can lead to the collapse of the fisheries industry.
We foresee illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing as being a threat to the fisheries resources of the region. IUU affects livelihood of fishers, affects their daily income. They put most of our small island economies at risk, since a lot of our fisher folks depend on the fisheries for their livelihood.
Security is a main concern of fisherfolk, since the issue of piracy is one which continues to plague the sector. Government, cognizant of this, has and continues to put measures in place to have this issue addressed. The Ministry of Public Security is the agency with direct responsibility for combating piracy. However, the Ministry of Agriculture, being the agency under which the Fisheries Department falls, gives full support in the fight.
We do offer support to those agencies in terms of providing information on players within the industry and so on. And we are also a member of the Interagency Task Force on Piracy. This was established sometime last year. That task force meets twice per month, and we do provide updates and so on, because we're in close contact with the fisher folks, so if anything should happen, they would call us first. But that information is basically related to the security forces, meaning Guyana Defense Force, Coast Guard, and the police force for them to act.
Piracy has to do largely with more surveillance, and that's at the national security level. It has to do with a better coordination with the Suriname police, because very many times after they do their mischief, they head up to Suriname. And I've spoken to the Suriname Minister of Security, and the Commissioner has spoken to the leadership of Suriname, and we are working far closer together now. And there have been cases where some people have been caught, and we understand too that they might be suspects in attempted piracy now. So when you block these safe havens through better diplomatic coordination between the ministry here and the ministry over in Suriname, it helps, because they also let their policemen know about these things. And quite frankly, we had incidents where the minister indicated to me that their fishermen over in Suriname might be attacked too by these same Guyanese fellas who have been attacking Guyanese. So we have to do a coordinate thing. And at the last heads of government meeting, I had a very, important meeting with her.
One of the measures put in place by the administration is the signing on to the Port States Measurement Agreement to prevent illegal fishing. This agreement came into effect in June 2016. The non-registration of fishing vessels is posing another threat to the sustainability of the sector.
It provides you with a number of actions that can be taken at port to prevent persons engaging illegal, unreported, and unregulated fisheries from landing at your ports and conducting business. All right, because invariably they might be illegal because they do not have a license. They might be unregulated because they do not report their catches or their activities. And they're unreported in that sense, and they're unregulated, meaning that they do not fall under any particular fisheries body, any nation, or any regional fisheries management organization. So these are persons that operate outside of the legal framework that ensures that fisheries activities are conducted in a sustainable manner. And us in Guyana signing on to that agreement, it gives us the tools to prevent that kind of activity from occurring in Guyana.
Vessel monitoring systems have also been installed on trawlers to allow traceability to give an alert of possible IUU fishing activities. Guyana is working towards international fishing standards. The Fisheries Department has joined with the seabob industry and applied for Marine Stewardship Council certification. During the second half of 2016, the assessment of the Marine Stewardship certification will continue in order to reduce bureaucracy and the red tape within the fishing industry. There is no doubt that fishing is very important to the local economy. It generates US $75 million in foreign exchange annually. The local fishing industry employs approximately 15,000 people, 5,000 of whom work in the actual industry, and another 10,000 involved indirectly. Many more citizens benefit indirectly from fishing-related occupations, such as boat building and boat maintenance activities. The fisheries sector is a significant net contributor to the government's revenue. Indeed, the ratio of the sector's revenue to the government's expenditure is more than 80-1.
Guyana's marine environment lies within the area bounded by the Orinoco and Amazon rivers, and during the rainy season it is greatly influenced by the heavy sediment load and great discharge of fresh water from these huge rivers, and its own large rivers of Essequibo, Demerara, and Berbice.
Guyana's marine fishing activities are directed at exploiting its shrimp resources using trawlers and its ground fish resources using wooden vessels and a variety of gear by artisan fishermen. It is accepted that of the shrimp resources, prawns have been overexploited, while there is a concern that the seabob, a smaller shrimp, and sharks are showing signs of overexploitation. At the same time, some deep slope species and oceans or sea species are underexploited. All working trawlers are now equipped with vessel monitoring systems, which will make it easier to confirm that vessels are complying with regulations. A CBOB management plan and code of conduct were completed and will be submitted to the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism in the third quarter of 2016 for an external review.
The CBOB fishing industry is a very important industry to Guyana. In terms of value for production and so on, it is the highest. It brings in most of the revenue for the government and so on. The value of their exports are higher than any other one of the subsectors. That industry in itself, a lot of the work that we do with them, they recognize the importance of their sector. They've done a lot of self-regulating work among themselves or in collaboration with the fisheries department. So much so that that the CBOB fishery is making arrangements to move towards Marine Stewardship Council certification. All right, that certification is an eco label that states that they will be able to put on their product that states that they have been managing the resources in a sustainable manner.
The move towards this status has seen the installation of bycatch reduction devices on trawlers to ensure that the quantity of fish which is caught and discarded is reduced, thereby balancing the ocean's ecosystem. The CBOB fleet upper limit has been set at 30 vessels. A smaller number has been established for the CBOB fleet because of the uncertainty about the CBOB resource and because of the fact that these vessels operate within the breeding and nursery grounds of the marine fishery. The trawler fleet is classified in terms of their operations. Prawn CBOB. The prawns vessels operate as a limited entry fleet with the upper limit being 80 vessels. The fisheries sector has recorded a fair first half of the year. Acting Chief Fisheries Officer Gary Beard outlines some of the sector's achievements and also some of its challenges.
We have basically continued to do our routine activities such as data collection. We also, in addition to data, we also issued a number of licenses, meaning export licenses, licenses for fishing vessel processing plants and so on. We've also been engaged in some amount of dispute resolution. And we've also maintained our contact regionally with the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism, which all Caribbean states are a part of. So far for the first half of this year, we have successfully hosted the Caribbean Fisheries Forum. This is a meeting of Chief Fisheries Officers. It was held in collaboration with the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism in April of this year. At that meeting, the Chief Fisheries Officer, Mr. Denzel Roberts, he was elected chair for the 2016-2017 period. This meeting is held every year, and various countries within CARICOM host the meeting. Also, we have reestablished the Fisheries Advisory Committee. Although this committee, the life came to an end on the 30th of June, it has been reestablished and they have been keeping meetings. We've also participated in a number of activities nationally. The Guy Expo, the Police Youth Fair, we successfully hosted the Fisher Folk Day on the 29th of June of this year. We also have the CBOB Working Group. This is a group which meets once per month or when needed to discuss issues concerning the CBOB fisheries. And those are some of our basic achievements. As in any other sector, one of our main challenges is the human resource. There's a high staff turnover within the department. Persons basically come to the department not knowing much about fisheries, and we have to train those persons. And then we find that persons will leave in short space of time, and replacements are very hard to come by. In addition to that, material resources, in terms of equipment and so on, we're very short. Most of our vehicles are very aged, so we hope that during this next budget period, we might probably get some new vehicles and so on. I can't say that it has all been dismal. We have managed to extend our head office building. We have increased the space so staff and visitors to the department will be more comfortable when all of this is completed. Most of the work has been completed, just finishing touches are going on now.
The 2016 mid-year report published by the Finance Ministry indicated that the fisheries sector grew by 2.1% for the first half of 2016.
Aquaculture is an important player in the industry. It is an area which has great potential for income generation and one which will drive the government's diversification plan.
Although activities in aquaculture first started in Guyana in the 1950s, the development of the industry has been slow. It has been retarded by the lack of investment capital, inadequate technical skills, the utilization of inappropriate technologies, equipment and inputs, and the almost total absence of research and training. Moreover, there has been very little foreign investment in the industry since investment prospects generally have been better elsewhere in the region.
Our capture fisheries subsector is undergoing some serious challenges, and we need to find an alternative to fill the gap. Therefore, we must look at the role of aquaculture in filling the global fish supply-demand gap, and so reduce the pressure on captive fisheries.
Freshwater fishing is conducted in rivers, creeks, lakes, reservoirs, canals, and in savanna areas where the seasonal increase in rainfall gives rise to large expanses of seasonally flooded lands. The aquaculture industry can prove very beneficial to the economy. International projections show that developing countries will consume and produce a much greater share of the world's fish in the future.
Production of fish from aquaculture has exploded in the past 20 years and continues to expand around the world. However, in Guyana, like many other CRFM members, aquaculture is proving to be struggling to take off commercially because of numerous challenges such as the high cost of imported feed and other inputs such as fingerling production. Also, the presence of non-tariff barriers in entering CARICOM countries, even within member states, continue to hamper progress, as we know it is demand that develops any industry.
The aquaculture sector contributes significantly to Guyana's foreign currency earnings, with the fisheries subsector contributing about 9.4% to the agriculture gross domestic product.
While the Fisheries Department and the government is not directly responsible for sourcing markets, the sector continues to do well with exportation revenues climbing.
The industrial fishery dominates the export market, which is concentrated on shrimp, whereas the artisanal and inland fisheries, almost in their entirety, are oriented towards the domestic market. The industrial fishery consists of over 100 trawlers, 5 fisher shrimp processing plants, and many wharves and dry docking facilities. The ice and freezing facilities which service this fishery are owned and operated by persons within and outside the fishery subsector. Owners of local fisheries are encouraged to become compliant with regulations in order to be certified to export.
To export to the European Union countries, there are CAT certificates that are required. A CAT certificate from the trawlers or the seabob vessels and the prawns vessels is a certificate that traces the catch from the time it is caught until it passes through the processing facilities and so on and it's exported. So there's a CAT certification system required to export to the European Union. All right. And there are also some other areas which processors have to be compliant with in terms of their plant and the hygiene and so on of their plants. However, the hygiene aspect of it falls under the Veterinary Public Health Department of the Ministry of Health.
The industry has recorded an export rate of approximately 8,459 metric tons for the same period. This export has a value of in excess of over $6 billion. The industry is on track towards achieving its 14,000 metric tons projection for the year. Industrial processors, which are export-oriented, account for most prawn and sea broth production and slightly under 4% of finfish production.
Sea broth fishing has been a long-lost tradition for about 70 years in the seafood industry. It's something that has grown and grown time and time again. It was mainly focused in the 90s, where more effort was placed into sea broth fishing. And there and then the business started to develop into a multi-million-dollar trade between the Americas, and it is an important aspect of our GDP of Guyana.
Sea barb shrimp are almost entirely exported to the United States of America in peeled form. A small quantity of cooked shrimp goes to the EU, and the remaining small quantities are absorbed by the domestic market. Most prawn, which is about 95%, is exported, with only minor amounts sold domestically to restaurants. Most sea barb is also exported. Industrial finfish production is split more evenly between export and domestic markets. Prawn are produced and exported in a variety of forms, but predominantly as frozen unshelled tails. This product is sold to the United States of America, Japan, and CARICOM countries. Meanwhile, Pretty Paul Singh Jr. confirms that overfishing is affecting the industry.
Overfishing has a major impact in the entire process of fishing for wild-caught seafood. As a result, it's a global worry for each and every fisherman, each and every business that is in the seafood industry. To combat these acts of overfishing and the plaguing of the seafood industry, especially in Guyana, we, as part of the fishery sector, amongst other plans, have taken the initiative to become MSC certified, that is the Marine Stewardship Council, which governs fishing in its entirety, whether it is the amount of days we spend fishing or the amount of catch we are getting. And it regulates it on a timely basis, a daily basis.
All of the production from artisanal fisheries and also a significant portion of industrial are taken from the deepest parts of the water stock. The pressure on these stocks is therefore intense. In contrast, oceanic species are hardly touched, except by poachers from other nations. These data immediately suggest that the need to impose sustainable management processes on deep water stocks, and at the same time, the desirability of expanding seaward to deeper waters. The industry has been playing a significant role in taking the country forward at all levels, and it has paved the way for Guyana to meet the Millennium Development Goals of feeding its people.
Like any sector, legislation plays a very important role in managing the day-to-day affairs of the industry. The fisheries subsector will soon move towards enhanced legislation as it gears up to meet international standards.
Currently, the sector in Guyana is governed by the Fisheries Act of 2002 and the Maritime Act of 1977. However, efforts are being made to revise the legislation. The Legal and Inspectorate Unit of the Fisheries Department of the Ministry of Agriculture ensures the observance of all legal and administrative requirements by all entities in the fisheries subsector and recommended appropriate charges to existing regulations which govern the sector. The key responsibilities of this unit include registration and licensing of fishing vessels, licensing and inspection of fish processing plants, conducting enforcement and surveillance activities of fishing vessels, and monitoring the industrial fleet's compliance with license conditions. The Fisheries Department is moving towards further strengthening its regulations to ensure compliance with the laws of the sector.
We've been working for the past 2 years or so, we've been working on a number of new pieces of regulations. The Fisheries Department is governed by the Fisheries Act of 2002. However, we've been working to update the supporting regulations to that act. One of those being the General Fisheries Regulations. That piece of regulation. We've already had a first review done by the Ministry of Legal Affairs, and it was sent back to us, and we made some corrections and so on, and it has to now go back to the Ministry of Legal Affairs. There is also the fisheries product regulations that will also have to be sent to the Ministry of Legal Affairs.
In 2012, an inland fisheries and aquaculture policy was developed with aid from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. This document will be used as the base for developing regulations for the inland and aquaculture sector.
We've come to an end of this week's edition of Guyana 411. I am Tiffany Rogers, encouraging you to visit our website, YouTube channel, and follow us on Facebook to be updated on all government's plans, programs, and policies aimed at making your lives better. Thank you for watching. Have a great week ahead.